Hi, I'm Peter Trude, and with me on the couch today is Professor Deo Prasad of the University of New South Wales Faculty of Built Environment. Deo, you've been working in sustainable building design for 25 years. In terms of the current challenges of energy consumption and climate change that face the world now, why is efficient building design such an important area to focus on?
Looking at globally and coming out of Copenhagen, etc., it is very clear that the biggest opportunity for emission reductions lies within buildings and cities. In the order of 30 to 40% of it can be gotten cheaply from technologies and techniques we know of today. And if we do more research and development in this area, we can even harness up to 60% sector-wide reductions. So it is clearly a big target in terms of emission reduction globally. And that same numbers translate within Australian economy, that we are able to get large reductions through this particular sector. In the United Kingdom, for example, they have recently passed a legislation, a building code, that requires by 2015 that they demonstrate zero carbon buildings.
Yes, now this is in the United Kingdom, and I think also in Europe, we're just a few years away from a building which will actually put as much or more energy back into the grid as it draws.
Yes, they have at European Union level, they have approved a building energy directive, they call it, which requires for what they call net zero energy buildings. The legislation is gone through now, but it will be, in both cases, effective by 2015. And that's the challenge period, that if they, by setting a goal for 2015, they're basically trying to get industries, researchers, and professionals all geared up so that they can be innovative in developing greener materials, greener integrated products and technologies, and better designs so that by 2015 they are able to deliver on that particular promise.
So in terms of delivering these new buildings, there are some interesting new technologies that need to be developed over the next 5 years, and you've been involved in the development of some of them yourself, including photovoltaic thermal here at the University of New South Wales. Can you tell us about this PVT technology?
Yes, PVT simply is taking the photovoltaic device for buildings a step further. Whenever photovoltaics is used to generate electricity, there's waste heat that comes out. The idea being that in a building integrated sense, that you capture that heat and usefully apply it to some part of the building for either heating water or heating the offsetting winter heating needs by dumping it into materials, etc., so that as a building as a whole works with the technology in delivering a lower energy outcome.
Now this is another focus of your work at the moment. You're looking at this idea of mainstreaming sustainable technologies, getting them into the housing design mainstream. How affordable is it today to build a sustainable home?
Today, you can build a new home at very little extra cost, maybe 3 to 5% extra compared to a conventional house. So the total extra costs are not very high. The idea is to get the basics worked out in the beginning. Basics meaning that you get your design, your orientation, your solar access, your window sizing, your thermal mass, your insulation, and the material and fabric used in the building worked out to a point where you absolutely minimize demand for energy. These are what you may call no additional cost items. They're no extra costs. So given that, you can then start looking at technologies, etc., to meet the difference. And that's where PVT or PV comes in. And your system size required for that is much smaller because your demand is very small now. And as a result, you can move towards a more close to a zero energy home without too much extra cost. And the extra cost today would in many cases have a payback under 4 years. Today, even you can see photovoltaic technologies being advertised with the current feed-in tariff coming into New South Wales and the product costs, the install cost. They're advertising today about 3 to 4 year payback.
So if I want to go and buy a sustainable house today, how easy is it for me to do that? Most homes, new homes, are considered to be energy-hungry McMansions.
Yes, it is possible. You would not get on the market, on the mass market today, a zero net energy house, for example. But there are increasing numbers of 5, 6-star type houses already coming in with the new legislations looking at 6-star becoming compulsory now nationally. It is pushing the bar up very rapidly. So the rest of the industry is now mainstreaming to some extent, but there's a fair way to go. There are organizations like Landcom who in their next development out west are looking at showcasing some of these best practice issues all the way to zero energy and zero water houses now in developments out west due to be released by late this year, early next year. And that would educate the public about the fact that it can be done, that the houses themselves are beautiful, well-designed homes, and it's no different from what you would otherwise have in a typical suburb. And as people gather that, as they get to understand that it is not rocket science, that people will buy into that.
So your focus, as we've mentioned before, is getting sustainable technologies into the mainstream at residential and at commercial building level. Are you optimistic now that it can happen, and what's it going to take to make it happen?
Yes, I think that's a very important question, that in going down that path, we have techniques, technologies, tools in place now. Where we're going into the future is much more towards what we call zero carbon type goals, zero energy, zero carbon goals. And to do that, we need to be innovative about a number of things in the research area. How do we get integrated product development, integrated material development happening that not only are low embedded energy, but they integrate with the overall design concept in a way that you can get a zero carbon building happening. And down the line by 2015, 2020, we would certainly be targeting zero carbon and zero energy houses. So to drive that, we need some more research in this area, together industry and universities getting together and with professions. But also the government needs to be mindful about some of the policy issues, what we call social innovations necessary for mainstreaming. How do we get policies and education of the community out there? How do we engage the community in moving down that pathway? These have to be happening in parallel, I think. There may be need for some regulations. We are making some of the regulations more stringent, pushing the bar towards 6-star plus houses already. But we need to have better incentives to look at the overall performance. That we are moving towards a more zero energy type goal rather than just dealing with one-off incentives. We should be looking at the incentive for the whole building, including your living, sustainable living practices to go down that particular pathway.
How does what's happening in Australia in terms of sustainable development compare with the situation worldwide?
I think we are moving pretty rapidly despite sometimes when there are blockages put into place. But in Europe, for example, they're clearly trying to move ahead much faster. They have had major achievements. Having a zero carbon house legislation passed is a good example. Zero net energy houses in Europe as a whole, these are leading the pathway, if you like. I'm pretty sure we would go down that track of lower carbon buildings and cities in the future. And we need to be making sure that we are innovative as a community in Australia to move down that pathway rather than staying within our comfortable domain of what we know. There's a lot of innovation needed for us to go down that pathway, both in terms of tools, techniques, technologies, and designs, but at the same time in terms of market transformation issues.
In terms of innovation, you're dealing with engineers and scientists. You yourself are an engineer and architect, so you're very much across what's happening on the technological side. Is there any one new technology coming down the pipeline that you're particularly excited about, something that we haven't seen in the public domain yet, but we're going to see soon?
I don't think there will be any one technology which will be the big bang, you know, in terms of the difference it will make. The idea in design, coming primarily from a design area, I think how we put the knowledge, techniques, technologies, tools, materials together is what's going to make the bigger difference. So the designer's influence on the types of technologies that work with buildings and producing good architecture at the same time as looking at better performance. These are the issues as we get the community at large trying to understand these types of issues, we will be able to move down the pathway of a much greener and sustainable environment.
Sounds like a happy outcome.
Hope so.
Deo, thank you very much.
Thank you.